Hi and welcome to this video about game design. Here we are looking at some basic features needed to design a LARP or a tabletop role-playing game scenario. Let's start out with a general overview of the basic design parts of a role-playing experience. Here we have three parts: pre-game, game and post-game. Pre-game includes things like workshops, info about the game, safety and so on. Game, this is the game design. It is including runtime as well as lore, characters and other elements of gameplay. Post-game, here we find emotional and intellectual processing and maybe educational processing if relevant. We often also have some type of facilitated after discussion. In this course, we will start out by touching upon pre- and post-game and then focus on the game design. In the next course, Transformative Game Design 1, we will go deeper into the pre- and post-game parts. Pre-game. Why should we have pre-game activities? Well, they have a purpose. They help with getting to know the format, helping players feel comfortable, making sure everybody knows the safety rules, getting players to get to know the setting, helping players to get to know their characters and their relations, rehearsing mechanics, helping with embodiment and/or role-playing, and encouraging players to research subjects related to the topics of the game. We also want to help the players to get to know each other off-game, and as an organizer, it's really important to be able to do expectation management. Pre-game activities can include both facilitated and non-facilitated activities, and they can be there both for the players, like making them feel comfortable, but also for the game master to get to know the group, get info to use during the game, and for setting expectations. Post-game. The purpose of the post-game activities is to help with three things: to reconnect with the world outside of the game, to reflect on the experience, and to recuperate after the experience. The post-game activities include different parts to be managed. These are emotional processing, intellectual processing, if applicable, educational processing, and community building. Some of this is often part of an after discussion, but not all. Some things happen outside of a facilitated discussion. For example, having a party after the game can help with reconnecting with the real world, recuperating, and building community. And now we come to the game. This means the design of the game. And I would here like to start out by clarifying some of the terminology we use here and what we mean by it. Gameplay design. Design that affects the player's affordances during the game, so what they can do. So this includes character design, mechanics and such, but it doesn't include off-game activities that happen during the game. Runtime design, on the other hand, is everything that happens mid-game while the game is run. So this includes things like act breaks and framing activities in relation to that, but instead it doesn't include, for example, characters, because that is something that happens outside of the runtime. And then we have game design, and this includes gameplay design, runtime design, and more overarching aspects like setting and narrative design. So to design a LARP or a tabletop role-playing game scenario, you have some overarching things you need and some more specific parts. Let's start with the overarching parts. Purpose. This is about answering the question, why do I design this game? What experience do you want your players to have? And this is also something you will come back to during your whole design process to see if the design aligns with your purpose in a good way. If you're doing an educational role-playing game, then the answer to this question would be your learning purpose. So, to teach about resource management. This is not the same as a goal. A goal is more specific and narrow, and it's something you can say yes or no to after. Did I achieve this goal? Yes or no? So for resource management, a goal could be to understand that the value of a resource is based upon supply and demand. A purpose is usually a lot harder to say yes or no to, since it's more overarching and not as black or white. If I here would take Just a Little Loving as an example, the designers wrote in their book how they wanted to design a LARP about AIDS, gay culture, alternative culture, New York in the 80s and cancer survivors through the themes of death, desire and friendship. It is hard to say a clear yes or no to this since it has many parts. So some could be a yes and some a no. And it's also not clear how much of each you need to be able to even say yes. But it is something that can lead the way through the design process. Vision. Vision is about expectation management and communication with your players. If you are making a sci-fi game, it's a good idea to be clear about if what you are thinking about is a very science-based story about the hardships of the first group of colonists on Mars, or if you want something more saga-like, like Star Wars with loads of aliens and space magic. If you are not clear and have players showing up to your game where some think they are playing the first game and others the second, then some of the players will end up being disappointed, no matter how good your game design is. To be clear, vision is not just about setting. It is more about mood or genre. Are we doing a horror LARP or is it slapstick? Vision can be described and communicated in many different ways. For example, in a blurb of text, orally to the playgroup, with mood boards, with references to other pop cultural material, or with a table of contents of what to expect and what not to expect. You can use all or just some of these depending on what you are designing and for whom. Those were the two overarching parts. Now let's go into the specifics and what questions you can answer to help you get a full design. So the first question is, where? Where are we? What setting do we have? Here we have the world we are in. It can be an existing fictional world, a new made-up one, or it could be our world, today or in another time. The next question is whom? Who is inhabiting this world? What are the characters and or roles being portrayed? Creating them can be done either by the designers, the players, they can be workshopped, or they can be in combination. And what the characters look like can also vary. A character can be many pages long with backstory and info about what they like to do and how they grew up. It can be super short. Maybe the players get to draw 3 characteristics that they will have. and it can be partly written. You as a designer have put a number of questions in there with different answers, like maybe what is your biggest fear? And then you put in 6 different alternatives where the player get to pick one for their character. But it could also be a picture. So you spread out different pictures of random things, and then the players get to pick one they like, and that will then be the base for their character. So if they picked a picture with a crown maybe, they can see that as that they are the king and high in the hierarchy. Or maybe they read into it that they are playing a rich character. Or maybe they see it as a pompous character that thinks too highly of themselves. There are many ways to create and work with characters. But as a designer, you need to choose how this is going to be done and by whom. Karin van der Heijn have written a chapter called Who Creates the Characters in the book LARP Design Creating Roleplay Experiences that actually goes into this more in depth. It also goes into the next part that we are talking about here. Relations. So how do these characters relate to each other? How do the nodes connect to each other? Just like the characters, the relations can also be created by either the designers, the players, they can be workshopped, or it can be a combination of these. If you have roles rather than character, then the relations are often part of where they are in the hierarchy. But just because you have a certain place in a hierarchy, that doesn't mean that you will react the exact same way to everyone else that has a specific position in the hierarchy. If you are playing a team lead, you might really like one of the designers, but dislike another one, for example. You can work with relations on many levels. You can look at it between individuals. So maybe each character gets 2 positive and 1 negative relationship to other characters. You can also work with it within groups. Maybe a group is a family, and then each family member will have a relationship with the other family members. You can also work with it between groups. And here, one easy way to work with it is through the rock, paper, scissors model. And here we are not talking about using this between individuals as a combat resolution mechanic, but about how different groups can relate to each other. So that would be where Group A has something that Group B wants, and Group B has something that Group C wants, and Group C has something that Group A wants. You can also work with it for individuals through groups. So maybe by creating different groups and then letting each character be a member of at least 2 groups. And these groups could be based on occupation, like nobles, magicians, and farmers. Political views, like liberals, anarchists, or conservatives maybe. Or interests, art, football, music. And then each character has different nodes where they have access to other characters that their character have something in common with. Or you could have a combination. For one edu-larp we had at Lajvbyrån, the children would play one of 3 mythological creatures. So they would be either a troll, a goblin, or a gnome. So that would be one group they belong to. Then each character would also belong to a witch. So each witch would have their own little group of trolls, goblins, and gnomes, and that would be their second group. Then the 3 witch groups also had a relationship with each other based on the rock, paper, scissors model. You can have how many of these connections you want in different ways, but just make sure that it doesn't become too much to keep track of for the players or for the organizers. The next question is why? Why are we here? You can answer why on different levels. You can look at it from an overarching level as the designer, and then it would be more, what is the story here? So maybe this is a story about oppression. Then you have the actual conflict or the situation you're in. So let's say we have a group of high-tech elves that are oppressing humans. And in relation to this, we then get goals. And the goals can be both on a group level, for the elves to keep the status quo and control and to get even more powerful, and for the humans to break free of the oppression. And you can also have goals on an individual level. As a human, you want your brother to not be so badly treated by his elven boss at work. The goals can also work against each other on different levels if you want to. So you might be part of the human that as a group want to get rid of the oppression. But you as an individual are one of the few humans that are treated pretty well and you have a good position. So you have a lot to lose if there actually is an uprising. Another example from an edu-larp we run at Lajvbyrån where the story was about science and discovery. The LARP was set in a steampunk world where the participants played students at a school. The situation we had was that someone had stolen the famous old drawings of an airship. And even if we had groups here, the groups all had a common goal: to find and expose the thief and get the drawings back. The next question is what? This is the question we most often forget to answer. What are the players actually supposed to do? Sometimes we can create amazing worlds and characters, but not really think about what the players should be doing during the role-playing game. Are the players supposed to negotiate? Are they looking for hidden things? Are they doing physical labor, if it's a LARP? Are they fighting? Are they sitting around telling stories to each other around a fire? All players don't have to do the same thing, but by trying to answer this and looking at this question from the different characters' perspectives, you can find out if you have missed something. If the game is focused mainly on fighting, what happens with the character that is written to be at home prepping things? Will that player have meaningful play? Like in a podcast I listened to where they played a tabletop role-playing game where all the characters and their players were really into fighting. And then a new player showed up as an accountant that had to be home for dinner or else his wife would be upset. And when the group started talking about plundering, the accountant asks if you can get a written receipt for the things they took. It became very humorous, but pretty quickly the new player didn't have anything meaningful to do. This is also a way to find bottlenecks. Do you have parts in your design where all the plots are dependent on that one specific thing that needs to happen? Like all the high-status characters are having a meeting, taking decisions, while the other players just get to wait around with nothing to do. The next thing is safety. And safety should be a part of your design, both for physical and for mental safety. We have talked about this in the previous parts of this course, and we will go more into it in later courses also, so I won't go more into it here. So, to conclude, the parts you need are overarching, purpose and vision. And for the specific ones, where are we? Who is there? What relations do they have? Why are they here? What are they doing? And how can I create a safe container for them to explore within? You might not need all of these parts depending on what game you create, but it can be a good idea to go through this to make sure you have what you need and that there isn't something that you are missing. In this video, I have talked about how to design a scenario or a LARP, but I haven't talked about systems. No matter what system you use, you can answer all of these questions. But different systems give different affordances. They are focused on different things, so they might fit better or worse with your purpose for the game. If you are running a tabletop campaign and you want your gameplay to be about social relations and for your players to explore different ways of playing and approaching problems in the game, then picking a system that helps with that is a good idea. So even if you could run a game like that in Dungeons & Dragons, that system is pretty heavily focused on combat. So maybe using the Apocalypse World system would work better here, since that has mechanics for making the players explore new ways of interacting with the game and trying out new things. Here we finish off this video about basic design. In our next video, we will talk about design restrictions. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next video.